Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Students, welcome to our virtual session of week 5 of System Analysis and Design course. If you can hear me properly, please raise your hands. Okay, so most of you can hear me. So in today's session, we are going to talk more about use cases. In our face-to-face class, we talked about use cases, what use cases actually are. When we have all the requirements in our hand, then we have to design or identify our use cases. So in our class, we talked about what use cases are, how we identify all the use cases, and once we have identified our use cases, we go through several iterations and then refine our use cases further. Then I told you about how to write a detailed description about use cases, and I told that the use cases are textual description of what the system is going to do, and it is actually maps your, or it actually represents the functionality your system is supposed to provide. So in today's session as well, I'm going to repeat some of the contents, and I'm going to give you an example to work out on, so that you can develop use cases on your own. So I have designed some slides, and I'll go through these. And meanwhile, if you feel you have any question, you can ask me anytime. So what is a use case? It is a formal way of representing how a business system interacts with its environment. So we are representing our system, and we are representing the interactions of our system with the environment. Then use cases illustrate the activities that are performed by the users of the system, and we make use case diagrams in unified modeling language. And it is called the scenario-based technique, in which we list down the sequence of actions the system performs at the end, and because of which the results are generated. When we perform use case analysis, we come across use cases in which there are some actors as well. So when we think about actor, what is an actor? The question comes to our mind. Now, the actor is a user or something, or some system which is outside that interacts with the system being designed in order to obtain some value from that interaction. For example, a patient may be interested to make an appointment with a hospital. So patient is an actor which is outside the system interacting with your system. Use case describe scenarios that describe the interaction between users of the system and the system itself. So we are going to represent, or we are going to display the interactions happening between the actors and your system. Use case diagrams are used, which describe what a system does from the standpoint of an external observer. The emphasis is on what a system does rather than how. So we are just seeing it, that what a system is going to do. Use case diagrams are closely connected to scenarios. A scenario an example of what happens when someone interacts with a system. For example, here is a scenario for a medical clinic. A patient calls the clinic to make an appointment for an early checkup. The receptionist finds the nearest empty time slot in the appointment book and schedules the appointment for that time slot. We want to write a use case for the scenario. So remember, a use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. So make an appointment is a use case. Now, the first step is to identify the actors. So as we read the scenario, define those people or systems that are going to interact with the scenarios. So when a patient calls the clinic to make an appointment, so when we read this, we have to identify actor from this. So we ask certain questions to identify people who are actors. Who is interested in the scenario? Where in the organization is the scenario being used? Who will benefit from the use of scenario or system? Who will supply the scenario system with the information? Does one person play several different roles, and do several people play the same role? And when you have identified actors, you can identify more actors with what other entity is interested in the system, what other entity will supply the information, or does the system use an external resource, does the system interact with any legacy system? So when we ask these questions, we come to know about actors, all the actors. So I told you that the actor is outside or external the system. It can be human, it can be peripheral device like hardware, it can be external system or subsystem, it can be time or time-based event. We represent actors through this figure, which is a stick figure of this kind. This is used to represent an actor. So whenever you see this diagram, this figure in a use case, it means an actor. A use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. An actor is who or what initiates the event involved in the task of the use case. So who is giving you input, who is initiating your use case is the actor. These are the simple roles that people or objects play. So you can call like patient an actor, or if some other system is providing, like bank is providing you information, then bank is an actor as well. Although it is some other system, but it is interacting with your system, so it will be another actor. So as we did our scenario, what or who is the actor? A patient calls the clinic to make an appointment. Patient is not part of the system. The receptionist is internal to the system. So the actor is a patient. The use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. So what is the use case? So patient wants to make an appointment and calls say so. The function or the task which needs to be achieved is to make an appointment. So it is a use case for the medical clinic. So medical clinic is a system in which make appointment is a use case. So now we have identified a use case and an actor. The picture below is a make appointment use case for the medical clinic. The actor is a patient. The connection between actor and use case is a communication association, or communication for short. So patient is communicating with make appointment use case to make an appointment. Use cases are represented through ovals or circles. Communications are lines that link actors to use cases in this way. So we have talked about how we write use case description in our class. So here I'm going to tell you about the components of use cases. The use case components are the use case task, which is a use case that presents the feature needed in the software system. The actors who trigger the use case to activate. Actor is the user or the person who is activating this. The communication line to show how the actors communicate with the use case. A major process performed by system that benefits the actor in the same way, models the dialogue between an actor and the systems, and represents the functionality. So this is all about use case. Now each use case in a use case diagram describes one and only one function in which users interact with the systems. It may contain several paths that the user can take while interacting with the system, and each path is referred to as a scenario, but it is doing a single function. It is usually labeled as a verb noun phrase represented by oval, like make appointment. It means doing something. Use case actors are labeled using a descriptive noun or phrase represented by stick actor. and the relationships represents communication. It is depicted by sometimes a single line, plain line, or double-headed arrow line, which is called the association relationship. So in this way, in this figure, we are representing it with a single line, but it can be an arrowed line as well. So we are writing it in this way. Now you can see here that there is an actor patient. There is a use case make appointment, but now we have placed a red line rectangle around make appointment. This is called boundary. It is placed to differentiate that what is included in the system and what is out of the system. So there can be many other use cases like make appointment, register patient, or calculate bill. These other use cases can exist inside this rectangle as well. But this actor will be, only single actor will be there who will be communicating with all. So this boundary is actually the boundary of your system. It is placed around the perimeter of the system to show how the actors communicate with the system. So, and the patient is not directly communicating with this use case, but it is communicating through the system boundary. In a use case diagram, if you have an appointment system, there can be multiple actors and there can be multiple use cases inside your system boundary. For example, in appointment system, make appointment is a use case, produce schedule information is a use case, record availability is a use case, because doctor's availability is also important when you want to make appointment. Management is also there to give you schedule information, that whether the space or slot is available for patients. So it is a use case diagram is a collection of actors, use cases, and their communication. So patient, management, and doctors are actors, record availability, produce schedule information, and make appointments are use cases. And this boundary is actually defining the appointment system. I want to know if you have any questions till now from the contents we have read so far. Do you have any questions? If you have, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something new, which is the relationship, the types of relationship modeled in use case diagram. After this, I'll give you an example to work on. Okay. Now, in use case diagrams, you can see certain relationships. One of them is generalization relationship, the other is include, the other one is extend. Generalization relationship is represented by a line and a hollow arrow. In this way, like child use case is pointing towards the parent use case, and this is the arrow which is hollow, and this is representing generalization relationship. So if there is a parent use case and there is a child use case, similarly, like you are aware of object-oriented programming, you have studied about classes and objects. So if you see that there is a child use case and there is a parent use case, so you can, between the parent and child, you can represent this relationship through this line and this hollow arrow. For example, in this diagram, you can see that when you say make appointment use case, making appointment can be for old patients and it can be for new patients. So this use case is a parent use case, but make old patient appointment, make new patient time, and these are the child use cases, who are actually child to this parent. So we are mapping this relationship through this hollow triangle. Similarly, make old patient appointment use case is parent to make payment arrangements. So all patients are already making payments. So this make payment arrangements can be there for make old patient appointments. So this is the it's like in this way. This is because here additional relationship is there. Extended relationship, we'll be talking about it shortly. But here you can see that make old patient appointment and make new patient appointments are the child use cases for make appointment, and we have represented this relationship through this hollow rectangle and these lines. And here you can also see that patient can be old patient or new patient, and this is also represented through this parent-child relationship arrow. So here we have management, doctor, patient, and patient has child, old patient, new patient. Now in a use case diagram there is another relationship which is include relationship. It represents the inclusion of the functionality of one use case within another. Like you are including the functionality of one use case in another use case. So arrow is drawn from the base use case to the used use case. You understand it? Because the name is just include. So you are including functionality of one in the other. Write include above arrowhead line. Then external relationship represents the extension of the use case to include optional functionality. Remember, optional functionality. So if you want to provide some functionality which is optional and which is going to extend the functionality of your use case, then it is called extend relationship. Now see this diagram. You can make old patient appointment on your own, but if you make patient payment arrangements, it will be extension to this make old patient appointment. Similarly, management produces schedule information and doctor records availability. To manage schedule, you include the data from here and the data from here. Then you can manage your schedule. So this is the include relationship. Now when you represent relationships in use cases, there are certain pros, like advantages, and cons, disadvantages. The pros are reduces redundancy in use cases, reduces complexity within a use case. So you can see that which cases are parent and which are child, which are extending, which are including. But the con is may introduce complexity to use case diagrams. Sometimes it is not possible to represent the reality clearly. So this is a disadvantage. So I'm skipping this slide. So now I'm going to, instead of going into more details, I'm going to talk about the example. I'm going to give you an example to solve. Okay, my question is, I want you to identify the use case and actors from this, and then I would like you to write detailed use cases. As we have studied in our face-to-face class, that when I ask you to write details about use cases, you have to write basic information, you have to write inputs and outputs, and you have to write the steps, the importance, its ID, and all that things. So before going onwards, I first want you to identify the actor and use case from this. Many people have cats. Suppose you want to develop software enabling the people to track them, to track the location of their cats. So people own cat, and their cat moves here and there, inside or outside your home. So what you want to do is, you want to have a software, for example, on your mobile phone, to track the location of their cats. Give a use case diagram modeling this software. So just imagine that you have an application on your mobile phone which is tracking your cat. So first I want to know what will be the actor and what will be the use case. Can you identify? So I want you to think about it and tell me about who is the actor in this and what is the use case here. So I've moved on my own. There are two actors, cat owner and cat. The use case is track location. Because you want to track the location of your cat, the track location is the use case. And this is the system boundary. Now, I want you to think about it and write this use case in detail. You have to write the basic information like name. I've already mentioned, track location. So you have to write the use case in this way, like you have to mention, wait for a second, I want some details about this use case. Okay, I want these details about this use case. Basic information, number, brief description, the event that causes the use case, external temporal triggers, major inputs and outputs, source and destination, etc. Steps performed. Right, you have seen this use case, sample use case for patient makes change and cancel appointment use case in our class. So I want you to write a similar use case for track location. So write basic information, steps, inputs, outputs, or any other detail you want to write about this use case. So I can move rather this diagram, I can move it over here so that you can so, and now I'm going to give you 10 minutes for this. Think about it, about this use case diagram in which you can see cat owner, cat, your system, and this use case. I want you to write detailed description about it, and I'll be after 10 minutes I'll be asking what you have written. Okay? So please start your work now. Okay, students, I want details about this use case. I want you to write the basic information, the steps about this. I want you to write this use case in detail. Students, can you see the slides? Can you see the question? If you can see, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, students. Now, I just want to tell you about the brief details about it. So you can write what you have written. So I want you to type in the text panel what is the name of use case you have written. Anyone can write. So what is the name of the use case? Can you hear me? Students, if you can hear me, please raise your hand so that I come to know that you are here and there is no problem in our communication. Okay, if you can hear me, please tell that what is the name of use case? What is the name of use case in our example? In this example, what is the name of use case? Track location. There are two actors, cat owner and cat. So, can you tell what will be the ID of this use case? It can be any ID. The only requirement for ID is it should be unique. So since there is no other use case, you can give any ID like 1, 2, 3. Any ID can be given. Now, can you tell that who is the primary actor who is going to initiate this use case? It is owner. The secondary actor is cat. Then let's skip precondition and postcondition. Yes, the description is, the short description can be to know the location of cat if we lose it. Now, the major steps. You can write about inputs and outputs as well. We have to write about inputs and outputs. I just want to tell you about the basic steps, like inside this use case. The use case is activated when the owner requests it. So when the owner wants to use the software, the cat cannot use the software. The cat owner can use the software. So the use case is activated when the cat owner requests to track the location. What the system does is the system checks the last known location of the owner's cat. So it means the system is getting the location of cat periodically, like for example after 5 seconds, after every 5 minutes, after every 10 minutes, or after every half hour. So the system is tracking the location of cat. So in its database, the system checks the last known location of owner's cat, and once it has obtained, then the system displays the location. The system cannot keep track of all the cat movement because it will be too much data for system to keep, because the system may be tracking multiple cats. So multiple cat owners will be using your systems. So to keep track of all the movements of all the cats will be difficult. So what the system does is the system records or tracks the location of cat periodically. So whenever a owner requests the location of cat, the system can check from the latest data, and it can retrieve that location, and then the system displays this location. So the input is from owner, and the output of this use case is the current location of cat as per the system. So not all the cat movement, because you have placed a tracking device in its neck, so you cannot do it all the time. So your system will be tracking your cat after some time and keep updating its database. So whenever the owner requests it, it can get the data from here. So this is the track location. This is the use case. These are the steps which we can write for this. So when you have to design a system, you are given description of the system, description of complete system. What you do is, first of all, you identify the actors in the system. It means the users or system who are outside the system, who are interacting with your systems. Once you identify actors, then you identify your use cases. Once you identify your use cases, then you make its use case diagram, in which you map the generalization, extend, and include relationship, and besides you write detailed description of your use cases. So you should be able to write details about use cases. This was a very simple example which I wanted to show you. So if you have any question from this, or you have any question from the contents of this week, you can ask me now. Okay, I'm turning my microphone off and I'm here. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I'll be replying through text or audio. Thank you very much.